video. So welcome everybody to this, our first meeting of May. Happy Feliz Cinco de Mayo a todos. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Did you see my thing that we all know that we're celebrating, we're commemorating the sinking of the Titanic, which was carrying a large shipment of mayonnaise.
I saw that.
Mexico. No, that's not true, of course. So tonight, Joe Evans is joining us. He's going to be talking to us about his family farm. I just extrapolated that. Hopefully it's actually the same Evans family and not just unique last name. I forgot to ring bell because my computer crashed. Let me bring the bell up because occasionally I get this right. It's not one of those occasions.
What does occasionally happen?
Oh, I love the smart aleck comments from my husband who very occasionally. There we go. Right there. We'll pretend like I did that before I kicked off the meeting. So Joe's going to be joining us to talk from a Rotary business standpoint. I posted in the chat the link to register for the Rotary International Virtual Convention, which is I think starts the 10th and 11th of June.
The anniversary of the first manned U.S. spaceflight. John, you're really breaking up there, dude.
Showing is muted. He's actually throwing his voice somehow.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That was kind of cool. So registration, early bird registration ends on Friday. So anybody who's planning to attend this year's virtual convention, make sure you get that registration to get the discount. Any happy bucks quickly before we get started? Keith.
I sure do. I think I paid last week, but I'll pay again because I just flew back to Bentonville, Arkansas this past weekend for my granddaughter's wedding. And I got to see my 4-week-old great-granddaughter.
That's awesome.
Plus, while I was there, I knew I had number 9 coming in September, but now I found out I've also got number 10 coming in December. So I'm going to have 10 great-grandchildren by the end of the year.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Scary.
Amazing at the age of 55, Keith. That's amazing.
I know.
So prolific.
Christmas is going to be a lot of fun for you.
I'm telling you.
It's going to be very expensive.
You're gonna need to grow that beard out, Keith.
Oh, I wish I could.
Any other happy bucks? Rob?
My dad just turned 98 last Friday, and my mom turns 98 this week.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Happy birthday to them both.
That's great.
Good stuff. John Cram.
I'll toss in 24 happy bucks. My wife and I celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary on Monday.
Congratulations.
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 Got a couple of years on us. Just a couple though. All righty. Thank you guys all for sharing. Appreciate that. Joe, I know that you were invited by Linda. Is she still on? Yeah, she is still on. I'm not sure how much information she gave to you about us as a club. Did she give you kind of an overview of who we are, or do you want? I'll do it. I'll do the. So we are a club within Rotary International, one of a new breed, which is 100% online. Our district, our home district, is the southeastern Michigan and southern. We'll just call it Southern Ontario region. 6380, but we have members all over the United States, all across Canada, one in Mexico City, one in Guatemala. What ties us all together, besides Rotarians, is that we all ride motorcycles. So that was our number one thing. So everybody on here, now that I finally got a motorcycle, has a motorcycle and rides pretty regularly. And are you familiar with Rotary as an international organization?
No.
Okay, so Rotary International is a service organization all over the world. I'm going to get all the dates wrong, but essentially we have 7 areas of focus. I'm also not going to be able to rattle off, but I'll try. providing education for women and children, clean water. This we added environmental sustainment. Told you I was not gonna be able to pull them off. Eradication of polio is up there. So, but we are all over. And David's laughing at me because he can do this in his sleep. But all over the world, and for more than 100 years, been doing philanthropic stuff. I'm all out of English. I apologize. It's been a long day. Philanthropic stuff all over the world for nearly for more than 100 years. I got to work on that. Man, who's your president next year, you guys? You got to do better. So that's who we are. I am going to stop talking because Linda's way better than this than I am. And I'm going to say, Linda, would you mind introducing Joe?
I would love to introduce Joe. So Joe is married to a very good friend of mine. What's John doing? His family owns, geez, over 8,000 acres of apple orchards in Yakima, Washington. And I got to get a mini tour of one of the facilities back in January. It's pretty fascinating. So I invited him to come share the whole apple process in Evans Fruit Company. That's it. It's all yours, Joe.
Okay. Well, I guess, where should I start? What would you guys like to know exactly? Like you want?
How'd you get into apples?
I was born into it. I didn't have a choice. Now I'm third generation into this business. It started with my grandfather, Bill Evans, who came over from Arkansas when he was a kid with his family. And from there, his grandfather, dabbled into the apple industry a little bit. But it wasn't until my grandparents, Bill and Jeanette Evans, bought their first 10 acres to start with. From there, they farmed that small 10 acres and then did commercial spraying and other sorts of manual labor and work for other companies where they could to make ends meet. It was difficult times back then, recession and everything. And just out of, sheer hard work and making some good calls along the way, they slowly grew larger and larger and larger. And, and now this is where we're at now. So, but my grandparents had 5 kids, one of which obviously my dad, and he continued the business, and he actually started his separate orchards as well. So yeah, at the age of, I want to say 18, I knew that I was going to be doing this just because, yeah, that's kind of family thing. And it's something I wanted to continue to pursue. So everything I did up until after that point of 18, college and everything, was pretty much doing whatever I could to get ready for what I'm doing now, which quite honestly didn't help, because there's there's a big difference of trying to learn about it in school and, on the job training, so to speak. So.
Is there, what's different about how I was sneaking around on your website today when I should have been working? What do you say is different in your operation compared to what we would normally envision for a farm to table operation? What would you say is different about your operation at your farms versus, what a bigger commercial producer would do?
So we are 100% completely family owned. My grandparents, like I said, growing up with absolutely nothing, definitely had appreciation of being very conscientious on finances. And because of that, they really kept an eye on their books and watched the pennies, so to speak. And, they've done well And, you know, they were very careful throughout the years. A lot of the other companies, like Evans Fruit, are either owned by multiple sources, or they have investment companies with ownership in them. You know, or some of these other companies are just flat out getting sold to outside entities, and the original owners aren't around anymore. And, you know, I don't know where their children or grandchildren, where they lie or what they want to do. But, you know, here in Yakima, there's probably, I want to say, maybe 3 companies, including us, that are completely owned by the families. A lot of other companies throughout Washington state, which range everywhere from Yakima to Wenatchee to Okanagan area. There's a lot of these other companies that, you know, they are more of a corporate and a little bit more, they have to answer to a board where, you know, we definitely didn't want to get to that level. We wanted to be able to call the shots when we saw fit, not have to get the approval from investors or a board to make a decision. You know, we try to keep a close eye on everything we do, which takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication. You know, my grandmother, she's 91 years old, for example. She still works 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and then usually on Sundays she goes and tours the ranches. That in itself, I can't tell you of anyone else who's doing something like that. So that's, I guess, one of the small things that would separate us from other companies. So
Yeah, so are you, with being able to maintain positive control of your entire operation, are you organically focused? Is it, you know?
No, you know, for us, and I don't want to come across a bad way, and I don't want to insult anyone if that's how you guys feel, but for us, we see, you know, organic versus conventional. And like I said, my grandmother's 91. She's still working 6 days a week. My grandfather, he literally worked till the day he died. And, you know, we've been around and we've grown up and lived in orchards all of our lives, and, you know, eat apples every single day and been around everything that they going to harm you and kill you and everything that should be careful with. And, you know, there was a big push to go organic. You know, we never took that approach. We saw other people doing it. We stay in contact with another family friends who do cherries, and it wasn't real profitable to go organic on a large scale. You know, when this, I don't know if I should call it a fad or what, but this push for organics, when it first happened, his name's Bob, and he owns a very large cherry operation. He's decided, well, I'm going to go all organic with all my cherries and go like that. Well, there was such a higher price for organics because of the retails and where they were going, that the movement slowed down. So, and it was funny, at the beginning of a summer when he was going to first start picking them, he was talking about going all organics. Before August rolled around, he's like, I can't do it. There's no way I'm going to be able to do it. And he ended up selling half of his organic crop as conventional. So, you know, it has a niche market, definitely. And there's a lot of people who, you know, really focus on that, and that's good for them, but we don't.
It makes sense. I mean, I have to think that the overhead would be difficult to absorb, especially for a fairly small organization.
So
John?
there's a lot more challenges and different protocols that you have to follow to go organic. Even if we were to say produce 25% of our fruit organically, to keep it certified organic, we would actually have to do a total revamp even on our packing line. The rules are, if you have conventional apples and you run them across your line and the next day you want to run organic, you have to take this thorough process, which is like an 8-hour cleaning process before you can even do that. And, it's not something you want to dabble on. And then for me, as I watched this whole process of organic getting approved, the lines get blurred, in my opinion, from conventional to organic, just to have a label on the fruit. I know guys who, and I'm not going to name names, but I know guys who sell fruit organic who are using materials which would not allow them to claim organic, but they do anyways. So for me, it's like, well, hell, some of the products that you're consuming in the store, it says organic, it might not always be the case. There's a push to use certain products that we use to help maintain long-term storage. But if it got approved, which a lot of organic guys are trying to do, it would definitely go against, what the actual term and what it means to be organic. So it's like, what's the point? So, I guess that's my 2 bits on it. And a big thing for our company is we do just as much export as we do domestic sales. And when it comes to export, no one cares about doing organic. When we're shipping overseas, whether it's to Indonesia, China, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, they have their own, these countries actually have other protocols that they all follow and want. So for us and how we operate, we try to do everything we can to come up with the best colored, the best quality, the best condition that will last the longest fruit. So, I ship fruit to Israel. For our fruit to leave here in Yakima, by the time it gets to Israel, will take anywhere from 45 to 60 days on a boat. And so we have to make sure that we produce the best quality fruit and the hardest fruit that we can before we send a product to a different country that far away.
Yep. John Cram, did you have a question?
I have a couple things. Number one, in defense of Joey, the organic certification does not mean chemical free. Organic farmers do use chemicals. They just use a different class. Second thing is, I'm here in Adams County, Pennsylvania, which is a big tree fruit growing area. More and more of the farmers are going off to onto densely planted dwarf trees on trellises. Do you see any of that where you are?
Oh, definitely. And to go back to the whole organic, yes, there is organic products out there, definitely. But I can, like I said, I can name farmers because they've talked to me where they were using non-organic certified materials on their organic blocks. So yeah, you're correct when you say, yeah, they make a whole line of organic stuff. I mean, they even make, when we tried to ship to the UK, there's even materials used specifically just so we can ship to the UK because of all the restrictions that are allowed for that. So you are correct in that, but what I was saying is they're actually non-organic materials that I know are being used on some organic blocks, but they don't say it. But anyway, yeah.
How many varietals are you guys producing out of you said you have how many, 11 ranches in Washington?
To say ranches is hard. We have ranches all through Yakima, Cowiche, Tieton, the West Valley, Tampico, Moxie, Sunnyside, and Mattawa. So we have different ranch names for all of them. And then within a certain ranch, we have different smaller ranches that will kind of add into that. So we have a lot of different ranches or different blocks, but we do have, I guess you could say, 6 main locations. So, but to go back to John's question on trellis system, yes, we do a lot of trellis, and it's funny because it changes throughout the years. Back before, trellis was really getting into, the norm, a lot of people were planting trees 10 to 20 feet apart and would go like that. And then it would get brought in closer, and dwarfing rootstocks, the NIC 29, M9337, Pagium 2 would get introduced to make a more manageable tree. Then from there, a few years later, it became popular to grow orchards on what we call a V trellis, where basically the trees, instead of standing straight up like this, they're V'd off in a single row and they crisscross each other. So they're only about 18 inches apart from each other, going like that. And you have a tree growing like this and a tree growing up like that. That's what we call a V trellis. That planting also has its difficulties because it's on an angle. And when you have a tree at an angle, instead of being straight up, there has been occasion where you get high moisture, rain, followed up with wind, and you have a crop load. And I've seen V trellises, 10 acres, get totally wiped out because the whole trellis system collapsed on itself. Doesn't happen often, but last year it happened to a guy down in Sunnyside on his granny block. So from V trellis, which is still used in some areas, I mean, we do it too on certain blocks. Now it's becoming more, I guess, popular to get them back to vertical. And instead of being 18 inches apart, they'll even space them closer. So trees are only a foot apart and they're all on a V, and they're about, the row spaces, I've seen guys plant them 10 feet apart. So they're very narrow spacings, which means that they're going to have more narrow equipment to use. And essentially the thought process is to make as many just straight walls of trees as they can. There's no real right or wrong answer when it comes to doing this. It's all opinionated, and the whole thought process on doing a trellis system with dwarfing rootstocks was to get more trees per acre, which would then in turn to theoretically more bins picked per acre. And like I said, we even us here at Evans Fruit, we try it all. But I can tell you, we had a block where the row spacing were. We had a row spacings where they were 20 feet apart from each other by 10 between trees.
At the far end of Islington Road in Newton, Massachusetts.
Who is it? I'm trying to find it. I think it's Tom. There you go.
And anyway, we were picking 100 bins per acre, which is fantastic. So yeah, it is more popular to do V trellis systems with dwarfing rootstocks, and we do it too. But there's no right or wrong answer in this because I see guys doing a lot of different things, and it is interesting to see what works out for who. But there's a lot of different factors that play into ultimately how many bins per acre you pick. Linda?
How many varieties of apples do you guys have?
Well, let's count them. We got Reds, Goldens, Galas, Grannies, Honey Crisp, Fuji's, Jonagol's, Braeburns, Pinks. We got the new one that's a Cosmic, and then we just started growing, not producing yet, but growing, and what we call an Evercrisp. which that came out of Ohio. And then we're actually going to be doing some experiments on a variety called Ludacrisp. I didn't make up the names. So, and then I'm talking to a guy, a nursery guy, who is producing an apple that has a pink or reddish flesh in the apple instead of being white. So currently, oh yeah, and then there's Sunrise Magic. So currently we are growing about 12, 13 apples, and we are currently packing or producing 10 of those. But we have 2 new varieties growing right now, which we will probably not pick this year, but we will start picking next year. And hopefully they do well in the market. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, a lot of these new varieties, they taste good, but the problem is getting them out on the market and hoping that, you know, the consumer likes them and that they gain popularity.
Keith, did you have a question?
I did. Joey, in an average year, what does your orchards produce into, I guess, bushels?
Bins. So we pick our fruit and put them into bins, and we produce, I'm just going to say on average, about 500 bins a year. But wait, 500,000 bins a year. So a bin of fruit weighs about 900 pounds worth of apples. And so, and it's no problem for us to pick any given year, on average, 500,000. I think last year we were 560,000 bins last year. So.
John?
You're in a famous area for hops. Have you given any consideration to hops?
No. So with how Evans Fruit is structured, I mean, it takes a lot of attention and a lot of focus on one thing. And for me, I want to follow suit with what my grandparents have started. And, you know, as far as diversifying, that means new varieties of apples for me. I'm worried if I try to start a new project that is going to take time and focus on what I know we're good at. And, you know, you can be really good at a lot of things, or you can be master at one thing. And I want to be a master at one thing, and that's producing apples. The hop game, that's a big game in Yakima. It's huge over here. We have so many microbreweries everywhere, and, you know, they're all good. And, but my knowledge on producing, growing hops is little to none. And so I'm gonna stick with something that I know.
Mickey?
Hey, there's always cider too, right?
So I imagine
Those two, we take all of our fruit, culls, juice processors, and we take those to juicing companies that will then in turn produce them into either cider or an apple juice or an apple sauce. Or if there are certain culls that don't want to get produced into juicers, they will then get turned into apple slices that you will see, like McDonald's. They produce bags of apples sometimes, and they're all sliced. So fruit like that is where it's borderline not sellable on the market. So we'll send it to a processing company that will then slice them and put them in bags instead.
I was just curious what your packing line does on the off season.
We don't have an off season.
Oh, cool.
We pack all year round. And this is Jeanette Evans, my grandmother.
Hello, Miss
Jeanette.
Evans.
Hello.
We've heard quite a bit about you.
All
Joe,
good. I
Joe's
hope.
all good. And he said you work far too much.
I know.
He didn't say that. Definitely what I took away from it is he is impressed by your work ethic and what you guys have been able to grow. That's definitely what I took away from his comments there.
Yep.
What's your domestic versus international shipping look like?
Currently we're about 60% export, 40% domestic. At any given point in the year, that may switch from 50-50 to the other way around, 40-60. We are very heavy into exports, and we ship all the way around the world. Like I said, Canada, Mexico, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Israel, all over. We've
Are
done.
there certain varietals that you're only exporting because they're more hardy, or is
Well, it's not that they're more hardy, it's that some of these other markets only want a certain variety. The world knows what a Red Delicious is. And as far as export, we sell more Red Delicious apples around the world than any other variety. And in the 2000 period to 2000 or 19, let's just say 1990 to 2010, that's where Evans Fruit really started to strive, was in the export market, and why we produce more Red Delicious apples than any other single grower in the state, if not the nation. And the reason is we got so much export demand on our Red Delicious into the countries like India, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and Mexico. That's just what they wanted. We try and push or ask our customers to try different varieties, and we do. Like the main varieties that we export are reds, goldens, grannies, and galas. Those are the main ones, and we send truckloads of reds out every single year. Well, I mean, every single week we send truckloads of reds. I mean, hell, we probably have 50 loads of reds going on export this week. And that's just, I guess globally what people want. That's what they know. Now they are starting to try new varieties. I've sent some of the new Cosmic Crisp apple to both Israel and Vietnam. And we're hearing good feedback on that, but a process like that takes time and it's slow, and within time it should grow into more. But the next new hot item that we're really starting to export a lot is galas. And it depends on the location. We've probably sent 60 full loads of galas to Vietnam alone. A market developed for a very high colored gala, and we grow galas that have almost just as much of a color as like a Red Delicious, and that country absolutely loves them. And which I hear funny things that once they get the fruit, they just peel them anyway. So I don't know why. So, but yeah, reds and definitely is a powerhouse for us, and export is definitely what helped build this company.
Are there certain varieties is there a particular variety that's easiest for you guys to grow, that your return on investment is highest?
Well, it's never really easy. There's a lot of complications.
Easier.
So galas have probably been doing very well. They're not like a Honeycrisp, where a Honeycrisp has a tendency to bitter pit, or even a golden, or even a gala, or not gala, but even a granny will sometimes bitter pit. And galas, as long as we take good care of the fruit and as long as we pick them on time, and I stress that so much because a lot of guys, they wait too long to pick a gala come harvest time, and they don't last that long in storage. And I've been really putting a push this past couple of years to pick them just a little bit earlier, and we've been doing very well with our galas, and we have some good markets for them. So galas is definitely one of those varieties where it's not too challenging to grow, and we are selling them at a good price right now. But yeah.
You had mentioned that you don't have an off-season. Oh, Linda, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Linda.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you had mentioned that you don't really have an off season. I guess I grew up in Michigan where apple season is August, right? That's when we go pick them. So what does your growing season look like? Is your off season just that you're processing things that were picked earlier in the year, or are you?
Yeah, so our growing season starts in March, and we start growing all the way to about the middle of August. Come about the third week of August, we will start picking some of our early galas, and then we pick through August into September, into October, and then finish up on pinks or pink ladies or crisp pinks in probably the first to second week of November. So after everything is picked and everything is either started being packed or put into storage, for us in the warehouse, we pack apples all year round. We will have periods of time where we might slow down production, where we might just run 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, something like that. But we generally pack fruit all year round. When it comes to the orchard after harvest, then we definitely don't have the workforce as what we do during harvest. We literally have an army of pickers and migrant workers that come in and pick fruit during harvest. But after harvest is done, we start focusing on fall fertilizers and blowing out irrigation lines, and start looking into pruning applications because we'll start pruning all of our orchards throughout the whole winter. So like I said, for us, we really don't stop. Not like cherries. Cherries, you pack cherries for like 3 months out of a year, and then that's it. And that's part of the reason why we never got into cherries. We didn't want to have that downtime or, have a multi-million-dollar packing line that we're only going to be able to utilize for 3 months out of a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Linda, did you have a question? Sorry.
Hey, Joe, can you tell them the process for going from the warehouse through the facility, the packing facility, kind of outline the steps?
Just the packing in?
Yeah, so when they come in from the warehouse and that was fascinating when you gave me that little mini tour.
Okay. So yeah, I'll run you through just a kind of brief packing process. So you take a bin of fruit and you first run the bin of apples through what we call a dump tank. The dump tank is a giant tank where the bin is guided by rods and chain, and the bin goes into this dump tank where it stays into the bottom of the dump tank, and all the apples float up with the water in the dump tank, and that's how we get all the fruit out of the bins is there in the dump tank. So apples go down a flume, and then the bin gets raised up out of the dump tank, and it's completely empty. From there, the apples will then go on to what we call a pre-sort, where they're being rolled along rollers, and we'll usually have a couple girls right there who are taking out any major defects, whether it's large bruises, whether it's cuts, whether it's decay, anything they might find obviously needs to be taken out and doesn't need to make it any farther down the line. Past that process, we got what we call the soap and rinse bar, where we have soap and water being sprayed onto the fruit. That is the cleaning process we have. And then fruit continues to roll down what we call a brush bed, where just the flow of apples pushing into another apple will help move the fruit down the line. And once you're going down that brush bed, all that soap and water that's on that apple is going down the brush beds, which are then scrubbing the outside of the apples as they're making their way down. Then they will then go through another hot rinse water to wash off any sort of soap that's on it. And then they go down another long rows of brush beds, and where there is fans above the brush beds blowing off all the excess water to try to help dry them off before they get to the waxing process. So after they get dried off, they make it to what we call the wax brushes, where we use a carnauba wax material that is provided us by our chemical companies. And there's different types of waxes, whether it's shellac or carnauba, or even like I mentioned before, even a UK or EU wax that we can use if we're wanting to ship some fruit to like the UK. And they get a thin coating of this wax on there. From there, they are then taken through by conveyor, what we call a drying tunnel, where pretty much a furnace is blowing hot air onto these apples to help dry the fruit and dry the wax on them. That gives us that shine. Once those are done with the process, they will then go through another sorting process where there might be any other bruising or defects, depending on whether the fruit had some issues, whether it got hailed on. We might try to take it out there. Once the fruit is through that sorting table, it then goes through our very expensive machine, which is what we call the sizer. There's 3 separate machines on what this sizer. Then we call them different boxes. The first section is what we call the camera box. Each apple, when it's being ran through, to get the imaging of the apple, to help get the color and to help identify any defects, each apple will get its picture taken about a dozen times. So every single apple, which is millions of apples rolling through, each apple will get its picture taken about a dozen times. And on that, we can lay out any individual apple on our computer program and slowly rotate that apple on the images and say, all right, this color here, we want to be marked as a premium. This color here, we want marked as a lower grade. And this defect here on this image, that's going to be sent to the Coles for juice. And this defect here, we're going to allow into the grade. So that's the first camera box. From there, it then goes to our transfer unit, which is basically a scale for all of the individual apples. So every single piece of apple will then get weighed in this process. The weighing will help with us determining the size of the apple. We don't really go by, the roundness of an apple to determine size. We go by weight. So every single apple then gets weighed to help determine whether it's this small 1/16 or a larger 64 size apple. And so after that, then it goes into the last process, which is relatively new. And I say that like it's only been around for, a decade, maybe 15 years now. And it's been getting refined every single year. And what this process is called internal flavor analysis, IFA for short. And this was a interesting product that the inventors of this machine stumbled on some other uses for these apples. So the internal flavor analysis was strictly used to shine very bright, very hot lights. I mean, these lights are very bright and very hot. Like if our line is not moving, and those lights are on, it will literally melt the plastic cups. And so as this fruit's passing through these light gets shined through the apple to a carbon fiber sensor that then will give us a reading on the amount of sugar or bricks in that apple. Now, what was kind of funny about this is the guys who invented this stumbled across a way of being able to take these light readings, these measurements of the sugar in the apple, and they were able to predict, it's not 100% accurate, but predict whether an apple was going to have any sort of problems internally. So whether an apple has what we call water core or internal browning, or whether the apple has soft pressures. This machine that just simply shines a very bright light through this cable allows us to check the fruit internally without actually having to cut any of the fruit. So that was a big plus for us when we first started using it, especially when we had to send fruit overseas. So from there, once it gets done with the IFA, the fruit then gets released into specific tray lines, which then are onto the process of actually getting the fruit put into the trays that go into a box. And then from there, they are put into a box. And once they're put onto a box, they go through our stamper operation, which gets all the information stamped on the box and then gets sent over to the sag line where they are stacked up to, depending on the configuration, 49 boxes per pallet. And then that pallet is then sent to a cold room, which then it will wait till a shipment until it's sold.
So with the flavor analysis, is that a random sampling, or is that literally looking at every single apple that passes through?
It looks at every single apple. So every single apple will get its picture taken. Every single apple will get weighed, and every single apple will pass through this IFA. And with that process, like I said, we can program these machines to help with sorting, with taking out any defects. Depending on the line operator, because it takes time and patience, depending on how that line operator is, he can, have a machine basically doing all of your sorting, taking out any bad apples without having any actual manual labor or people doing it themselves. It's not always 100%. With these machines, there's always what we like to call a 10% chance of error. But they do work very well compared to what was around, say, 30 years ago.
It's funny how different people in this group have done different things. And one of the things that I used to do when I was in the military was I did AI, where we were looking for specific types of vehicles or specific types of people, and it's exactly the same process. It's kind of cool to see that used in a much different
and
situation.
what we're doing is it's nothing fancy, but there is some very technology is definitely having its part in the apple industry and produce industry as well. We haven't jumped on it, but they have palletizing machines, robotic arms that are picking up boxes of fruit and setting them on a pallet, waiting for a forklift to come in. We've looked at machines where instead of having a person standing on the line and grabbing the apples, putting them in a tray, they use this robotic system, which actually has a robotic arm going down and picking up the individual apples and putting them on the tray. there's a lot of process of that that's really starting to develop, and there's machines out there that are being used. And it's going to happen where a lot of these packing houses per se are going to become fully automated. And with everything that's going on in the country with as far as labor, and having this difficulties with people not wanting to work as much, with all the stuff that we have going on in our own state, there's going to be more and more of a push for that to occur. A lot of people, even people who work for us, they say, the younger generations don't want to put in the same amount of work as the older generations. And there's a lot of truth to it that we see. Not with everyone, but in general, it's happening a lot. There's a lot of other packing houses where they have to, put out signs, help wanted. And it's crazy to me because I know how many people aren't working right now that could. So
it's interesting. It's interesting to hear, saying that they're not working as hard. It's just my take. Employing different types of people, right? 20 years ago, you weren't going to have a software engineer on your line. And now it probably makes sense for you to have a software engineer, to have an automation specialist, to have these people that you wouldn't have had previously.
I mean, and it's same thing in the orchard, with the labor situations in the orchard and how government's wanting to, handle certain situations. Automation is being developed right now for the orchards. I've seen probably at least half a dozen different styles of picking robots. I've seen everything from a platform being ran through an orchard where a robotic arm's going out, extending out and picking off an apple. To hell, I saw one just a couple weeks ago where they're using drones to pick apples. Not saying it's the best way to do it. I don't want to get into that yet because it's there, but it's not as efficient and as careful as what I would like. But it's being developed right now. There's companies, they use GPS guided tractors to mow an orchard. Technology definitely is playing its way in the produce business as well.
I wish I could send you my 18-year-old, Joe, to learn how to work.
Well, and I shouldn't, it's not with everyone because hell, I mean, we still have high school students and college students who are coming to our facility looking for part-time work and doing whatever they can. But in general and as a whole, it's not what it used to be like back in the day. We do have good individuals, great employees and individuals who are hard workers, but in general, society, or at least this country, it's a lot different than what it was even 15 years ago. We never had a problem with labor. Here in Washington, H-2A, contracted workers are being brought in from other countries all the time. We as a company, Evans Fruit, we dabbled in that a little bit. We only had like 30 people helping us just so we could see what it was like and see what it was going to take. And we didn't find it to be cost effective for us, but there's a lot of other companies out there here in Yakima, here in Wenatchee. They literally bring in hundreds, if not a couple thousand of H-2A workers every single year. It drives me up a wall because I know, and I look around a lot more in the city areas than anywhere else where there's a lot of people who aren't working that could be. So.
Yeah, that part is really complicated, trying to give people, as I've heard it phrased, the dignity of work. But if they're not willing to do that work, it's another way to get the money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to get off topic of apples too much, but I mean, we had the situation where there was guys or individuals, I should say, who were actually trying to get fired this past year, collect unemployment. And it's not just with us. It started last spring where we bring in bees this time of year to help pollinize our crops. And we had our bee guy tell us how one of his crews intentionally dumped a load of bees on the highway so they could get fired, so they could go collect unemployment. And it's challenges like that where it's like, what do? You keep those guys on and risk having them, continue to do stuff like this? Because, when it comes, at least in the state of Washington, if they get fired, they get fired. And then they can collect unemployment. So, it's a lot of difficulties right now with that. And, it's that some of those reasons alone that's really going to continue driving technology into our industry.
Yep, for sure. Well, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. Do we have any last questions? All right, none heard. Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.
Yep.
To join us
Really
at any
enjoyed
time.
it. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, this was really, there's a lot of chatting going on in the background. We were like, holy moly, this is a huge operation. John Cram didn't really tell you, but he owns a vineyard and he makes wine up there. I think he said that they don't have any of their fruit trees anymore that they had, but you guys would have quite a bit to talk about. So,
yeah.
So thank you.
I got rid of all my apples because it's too much like work.
It is a lot of work, no doubt. And hell, we've even considered the idea of doing wine grapes ourselves in certain areas where we were worried about getting water. But last year and the year before, the wine market over here just tanked. There was other companies, one called Washington Fruit. They had a big old wine vineyard over near the Mattawa area, and I think the wine Saint Michel pulled their contract, and that whole vineyard suffered. None of it got harvested. And so it's like, it's continuously a guessing game on what's the best thing to do.
And I guess that's why, you guys are taking your fate into your own hands by being your own producer, distributor, making sure that you control the whole line.
And even that is not easy.
Yeah, no.
I like our situation. I like just being able to have to depend on us, but even that still has its own challenges. And yeah, it's a tough industry.
For sure.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I'll keep an eye out for your apples though, for sure. We eat our body weight in apples, I think, every week with 2 teenagers in this house. So
well, I mean, if anyone is around the Yakima area, you can ask for us specifically, come to one of our facilities. We'll sell you boxes right from our facility. That way, it. We, this past year, made the decision on our PLUs or stickers that go on the apples to put our name on them. So, you can keep an eye out for that. There's probably not too many on the market yet, but it will probably be growing. So
good stuff. Well, thank you, Joe and Linda. Thank you very much for coordinating. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you guys all very much for your good questions tonight. To end the meeting, Joe, we read the Rotary 4-way test, which is the things we think, say, or do. And Tom Dines was being nice and he put it up in the background, I think, because he thought I was going to mess it up. But I'm going to pick on tonight. I'm going to pick on Scott Nelson to lead us in the 4-way test.
Yeah, okay. Of the things we think, say, or do, number 1, this is the truth. Number 2,
Is it
fair
fair?
to all concerned. Number 3,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And number 4, will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
And the unofficial number 5,
is it fun?
And today, will it involve some apples? No, I kind of want an apple, Joe. All right. Thank you guys all very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Scott.
Amanda,
Sir.
Amanda, Linda and I need to stay on for another minute.
All right, cool.
Good night.
Good night, Joe. Thank you.
Complexities of business. Take care, all.
See you later, Tom. Do you guys want, Linda, do you want me to give you a host and drop off?
Yeah, but stop
Okay.
the recording.
Was there supposed to be a president's meeting?